Welcome to Angelcynn Origins, the podcast that explores the history of the Anglo-Saxon people, from their origins to the Norman conquest. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the lives of the key figures of this fascinating period, from kings and queens to warriors and poets. Through storytelling and analysis, we'll explore the events that shaped this pivotal era in English history, and how they still resonate today. Hello and welcome to Angelcynn Origins, episode number 1. I'm so glad you decided to join me as we explore the rich and fascinating history of the Anglo-Saxons. Who they were, how they lived, and how they influenced modern day Britain. For the first episode, I thought it would be best to start with a little bit on the Anglo-Saxon migration. Who these people were, and how they came to be on this beautiful English isle, as well as its significance in English history. During this episode, we'll explore the events leading up to the migration, as well as the migration itself. The Anglo-Saxon migration refers to the movement of Germanic peoples from Northern Europe to England in the 5th and 6th century. This migration was a significant event in English history, as it led to the formation of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and eventually the unification of England itself. Now, there are multiple reasons for the migration. Some historians believe it was due to pressures from other migrating groups, such as the Huns and Goths. Others believe the decline of the Roman Empire played a big part. Others suggest that the Anglo-Saxons were attracted to the fertile land and resources available in England after weather conditions became too challenging in their homelands. Personally, I feel it may have been a combination of the fall of Rome and the land and resources being more available and sustainable. No matter what the main reason though, the migration and settlement of the tribes had a profound impact on England. The Anglo-Saxons brought with them their language, which is now referred to as Old English, which would eventually evolve into Middle English, think Geoffrey Chaucer and Canterbury Tales, and then on to Modern English, which is what we speak today. They also introduced new social, political and religious systems, such as the Germanic tribal structure, and eventually adopted the Christian faith in place of the paganism that they brought with them. The Anglo-Saxon period saw the development of a unique English culture, characterised by epic poetry, heroic literature, and intricate metalwork. But before we go into more detail, I think it's important to give some background to the migration, and what was happening in Britain prior to the Anglo-Saxon invasion. So, before Alfred and Athelstan, or Edward and Edmund, or any of their predecessors even stepped foot on English Isles, there had already been a number of conquests and occupations of this fair land, most notably the Roman Empire, whose occupation in Britain began in 43 AD and lasted for almost 400 years. When the Romans first arrived in Britain, they encountered resistance from the native Celtic tribes, which we'll get back to in a moment. However, they quickly established control over the southern part of the island, and then eventually conquered the whole of Britain. The Romans brought with them advanced technology, engineering, and architecture, which had a significant impact on British society. They built roads, walls, and public buildings, and introduced new methods of farming and industry. One of the most famous examples of Roman engineering in Britain has to be Hadrian's Wall, which was built in 122 AD. To protect and separate the Roman province of Britannia from invasion by the Picts and other northern tribes, and spans a total of 72 miles from east to west coast in the north of England. I actually grew up not too far from a number of remnants of the wall, and remember playing Centurion as a kid on part of the wall itself, climbing all over its 1,000 plus year old structure. Imagine fighting off oncoming hordes of Picts and battling mighty warriors. I lived on the civilized Roman side of the wall, of course. But getting back to what we were discussing. As I mentioned, not everyone in Britain welcomed the Roman occupation. There were several uprisings against Roman rule, including the famous rebellion led by Queen Boudicca of the Iceni tribe in 60 AD. She led a revolt against Roman taxation and oppression, and although her army was eventually defeated, her legacy as a symbol of resistance to Roman rule lives on. Now, by the 4th century AD, the Roman Empire was beginning to decline, and the Roman legions were withdrawn from Britain in 410 AD. Now, this marked the beginning of a new era in British history, as the country was left vulnerable to invasion by other tribes, one of which were the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons, as I mentioned, is a collective term for the tribes that came to Britain, the Angles and the Saxons, hence Anglo-Saxon. But they weren't the only ones to migrate, as there were also the Jutes and Frisians who also migrated with them. The first Anglo-Saxon group to arrive in Britain were the Jutes, coming from Jutland, in what is now northern Denmark, who settled in the Kent and Isle of Wight areas in the mid-5th century. They were followed by the Saxons from Old Saxony in northern Germany, who established settlements in the south and east of England, and the Angles from Anglia, which was a peninsula east of Jutland, who settled in the north and east of England. They were then also followed along by the Frisians from Frisia, which is now northern Netherlands. Now, we can't discuss the arrival of the Anglo-Saxons without at least mentioning the brothers Hengist and Horsa, who were said to have led the migration/invasion. But in interest of saving time, I feel that's a story for another day. I do have a short post on my Instagram, also called Angelcynn Origins, about the legendary brothers, so if you fancy a sneak peek at their story, feel free to check it out. Now, the arrival of the Anglo-Saxons in Britain was not a peaceful process by any means. Invasion and conquerance seldom is. The native Britons, who were mostly Celtic-speaking peoples, fiercely resisted the Anglo-Saxon invasion to their home, leading to a period of brutal warfare and conflict. However, the Anglo-Saxons were skilled warriors, and they used their superior military tactics and weapons to gain control of the land. The native Britons, on the other hand, were not as organised and unfortunately lacked the military strength to resist the Anglo-Saxons effectively, and they were eventually pushed back and dispersed to the western and northern parts of Britain, which became Wales, Cornwall and Scotland. The name Wales actually comes from the Anglo-Saxon term Wales, ironically meaning foreigner, despite them being native to the lands. The integration of the Anglo-Saxons was not all negative, however. They did bring with them new skills such as metalworking and shipbuilding, which helped improve the economy of Britain, as well as introducing new tools such as the plough, which helped expand and improve the agriculture of the land. The Anglo-Saxons also established a new system of government and law that was more organised than that of the native Britons, including the formation of the First Kingdoms, which would eventually form what is known as the Anglo-Saxon Heptarchy, which is Northumbria, Mercia, Sussex, Essex, Kent, East Anglia and Wessex, all of which have their own stories and history that lead us to where we are today. The withdrawal of the Roman Empire also left behind a number of areas that became easier for the Anglo-Saxons to settle in, having already proven useful for farming and agriculture, as well as leaving previously used structures that could be rebuilt or repurposed. All of this made the conditions much easier for the Anglo-Saxons to call this new land their home. And there you have it, the story of the Anglo-Saxon migration to Britain and its significance in English history. The Anglo-Saxons left a lasting impact on the country, shaping its culture, language and identity in countless ways. It's incredible to think that the actions of a few tribes over 1500 years ago still have such an impact on our lives today. If you're interested in learning more about the Anglo-Saxons, there are plenty of resources available, from books to documentaries to podcasts like this one. There's no shortage of ways to explore this fascinating period of history. Thank you so much for listening and spending some of your time here. I really hope you've enjoyed the first episode and learned something new. Please feel free to follow the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you like to listen to podcasts. Like it, share it, rate it, all that good stuff. It would really mean a great deal to me. Join me next time as we delve further into the world of the Anglo-Saxons, as we continue to explore their remarkable society, culture, and everyday lives. Until then, take care and stay curious. Bye bye.